And we continue at 1:05 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang has the day off. He'll be back with us on Monday. 800-222-5222 is telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. We have some breaking news coming from the nation's capital where two National Guard troopsmen were killed in a shooting in Washington, D.C. The governor of West Virginia has confirmed that news. Fox News is also running with it. Beyond that, I don't know any details. So our thoughts and prayers with the family of those two troops who were shot and killed in Washington, D.C. And as soon as new information comes in on that, we'll bring it to you right here as we are live today until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. All right. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the host of the Evil Thoughts podcast. You can get him online at joecrummey.com and follow him on X at Joe Crummey. Joe Crummey, welcome.
Hey, John. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, too.
All right. Yeah, I got the bird ready to go, so I'm good.
Okay, now, at Casa de Crummey, when you're doing the Thanksgiving meal, is it the standard fare, or do you throw in a little curveballs here and there?
As a matter of fact, I'm going to throw less pitches this year because I'm dumping the mashed potatoes this year in favor of super duper stuffing. I figured it's basically the same stuff, but stuffing is more interesting, so I'm going to push that harder this year. And of course, it's all about the gravy for me. I mean, turkey is great, but unless you have boatloads of gravy to wash it all down, it makes me. And there's never enough gravy. It's like tax revenue. There's never enough.
That's right. Now, I remember back in the day, you did a boat trip with listeners to Catalina Island, Immigrate with Joe, and people were dressed up like pilgrims on that one.
You remember that? Oh, God. Yeah,
I do.
That was a long time ago. I remember that. Yeah. And the weather, it was like Gilligan's Island. The weather started getting really bad, too. And we had to cut it short because I was going to vomit. I remember that.
Now, Joe, earlier in the show, we spoke with a woman by the name of Tish Hyman, who was using a gym in Los Angeles on La Cienega Boulevard, the Gold's Gym there. And she got involved in a confrontation with a transgendered woman who was in the female locker room. And that video went viral. And I'd heard the basics as to what happened. And when you talk to her about it, it's worse hearing her describe it than it was in the newspapers. She said that this guy was apparently there all the time and was exposing himself to the women every time he was in there. When the women would tell him that they don't want to see that, he would say, women love looking at male genitals. They love looking at me more than they love looking at you. You're just jealous. And then would hang out in there for long periods of time and follow women into the sauna and into confined spaces and then expose himself to them there too. And then when Tish finally complained about it to the gym, they called the cops on her and they revoked her membership and they told her she needs to work out someplace else.
Well, that his argument even flew for a tenth of a second is really funny. I mean, you started explaining to me about what his argument was, and that flew? Really? Somebody said, yeah, sounds pretty good. Yeah, okay, I guess when you put it that way, yeah. Is this a different one? Didn't we have a similar situation in L.A. at some kind of a gym a year ago or two? And I think it was a black lady who was really screaming about it. She was in the locker room with the girls singing. There was a guy in there. Is this a separate incident, John?
No, this is the same one. Tish. She's a singer and a songwriter. We just had her on.
Yeah, that's funny though. Well, yeah, you're just jealous of the fact that they all want to look at me. It's weird. I don't know. It's crazy. What do you want me to say, John? I mean, it's insane. The fact that anybody tolerated it for 10 seconds is weird. I mean, that's the thing. That people tolerate it, and you said, and when she finally got around to complaining, that's another tell to me. It's like, what? He wasn't out of there immediately?
What's nuts to me is if you just think about this. Now, we've been desensitized to it because we all live through this. But just imagine trying to explain it to a relative who had passed away. Imagine explaining this to your grandpa and say, Grandpa, okay, here's what's changed.
I think about it because my mom and dad passed about a decade ago, and every once in a while I think the same thing. I go, what if they were around today? What would they think? What would they think of where we're at now? It's funny. You talk about we're desensitized to stuff. I was driving on, where was it, Colfax and Magnolia a couple of days ago. It's right by North Hollywood High. It's right there, and on the southwest corner of the intersection, they built a new building there maybe a couple of years ago, and it took them a long time to do it because it was kind of fancy and kind of whatever. But it was right on the corner there. And I was driving back from Home Depot, and there it was on the right side of the street. I even made a video of it. And there's a complete homeless encampment all around the ground floor where businesses would have their doors to open up and stuff. And I just started laughing. I was thinking to myself, what if you were an investor in this building and you spent all this time and money to make this slick-looking LA building, and it's surrounded by homeless people? And I said, that's the fact that you would even tolerate that for 10 seconds is it shows you how we've learned to tolerate all this nonsense. It's not just people in dressing rooms who shouldn't be there. It's a lot of stuff that we just seem to look the other way now. I just accept it. If I had invested in that building, I don't know. I might walk outside and physically throw those people out. I mean, you would have hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars invested in this building, and then it's surrounded by a homeless encampment. There's something wrong about that, that we shouldn't be tolerating it, but we do.
I don't know if you saw the interview, but the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, recently did a sit-down with Big Boy, who looks nothing like the guy you used to see on the billboards. He lost all the weight. And Big Boy asked a question I thought that was a very good one, which is, we lived here a long time. And there's something about Los Angeles that just drew us all here, whether it's looking for fame and fortune in Hollywood or the weather or the beautiful people, whatever the case. And it seems like a lot of that magic has just gone with the homeless, with the crime, how dirty the city is right now, issues like this that pop up where the obvious logical position is the one that the exact opposite one is the one that took. Things like this that go on a daily basis, and there's just this apathy where no one seems to care about fixing any of it, and it's just a lot of the magic is now gone. And he posed that question to the mayor.
And what did she say?
She disagreed with him. She thinks that everything's fine here, and we have problems, but it's all of our responsibility to fix it. And you shouldn't look to the mayor to fix all of those problems. You shouldn't look to the government. You should look in the mirror, and you should ask yourself, what can you do to bring the magic back and fix the town?
Wow. Well, I may not be able to do something, but I'd sure like to see Rick Caruso run for mayor. I don't know if he's going to bother doing it. You said something a couple of weeks ago that I thought was really interesting. I was listening to you a couple of weeks ago when Ray Wong had announced that she wants to run for mayor a la Mondami, free housing for everybody and free buses and all this kind of stuff. And you guys brought up, how does she get elected? I mean, how does Karen Bass actually get elected? And part of the problem, I think it came up on your show, is you have a lot of voter apathy, and the people that are voting are the people that are either union members or people that are going to make sure that they're going to be on the gravy train again with her. So we keep getting politicians like her in office, and the rest of us are kind of apathetic, and we turn away and we just throw our arms up and go, whatever. I mean, look, have you guys talked about that one house in the Palisades that actually got a certificate of occupancy permit? And the mayor went on X, I think it was about 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 days ago, and said how great this is because we've got the first house which is ready, after the fire, and isn't this great? And we're Palisades strong, and this is what we can do. And we cut tape and do all this, cut the red tape and all that. And it was all nonsense. We find out now, like she had to take it back, that the permits were pulled before the fires. It had nothing to do with it. It had nothing to do with anybody rebuilding anything with the fires. And so she's had to walk that back. And I think it's because I think you're right. People are apathetic and they don't pay attention. I mean, the fire thing is coming up on a year now, and it's remarkable. There hasn't really been anyone held accountable, especially the mayor or the governor or any of these people. There haven't been any investigations as far as I know. And it just seems to be, it's just a matter of fact that this is what happened. And for some reason, she got caught on X and had to take it all back. But even then, I don't think there's going to be a price to pay. for that duplicity. I don't think so.
You've lived in New York City. You were on the air at WABC, WNBC, some of the most famous stations in the history of the country. You know that city well. How bad do you think Mamdani is going to be for New York City?
Well, that's the funny thing about it. Where is he going to get the money? That's the thing. And, you like to talk about state politics, and he's got to go to the governor and he's got to convince her if he really wants free stuff for everybody, the way that Ray Wong is talking about in L.A. I don't think she's going anywhere. But Mamdani is. I think he's a much better candidate. I don't know much about this Democratic Socialist lady that announced a couple of weeks ago. Mamdani is a good candidate with, he can speak and he can rile people up and, sounds great. It's about getting the money. And can he put pressure on Kathy Hochul, the governor, to raise taxes to such an extent that he can actually provide some of the things he's promised everybody? I don't think he's going to be able to live up to those promises. So I'm hoping that it'll be just a very disappointing mayor, that he wants to do all these things, but he's not going to be able to do it because there isn't going to be the money, at least for those programs. Now, with regard to his attitude toward the police or, social programs in New York in general, I'm hoping it's not as bad as it could be. I'm just hoping that it'll be more stagnated because he's not going to get the money.
Did you live there when David Dinkins was mayor?
Was I there? Was I there with Dinkins? When was Dinkins mayor? He was before Giuliani. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was the one before Giuliani and after Ed Koch, in between.
Okay, so I was there in the 80s when the subways were out of control. So that's definitely pre-Giuliani. And it was out of control. There is no question about it. When I first moved to New York in the 80s, when I went to work playing rock and roll at WAPP, it was out of control. The subways were out of control with graffiti. You would stop, say you'd be coming into the city, you were at a stoplight, you would be surrounded by people that, quote, wanted to wash your windshield, and it was extortion. You just had to give them the money. It was out of control, and it got a lot better under Giuliani. I'm assuming it could get worse again under Mamdani. I'm sure it can, and I just don't know because I'm not there now, John. I'm just saying that if we're lucky, he won't be able to do much because there isn't going to be any money.
When I was watching that movie, the Joker movie that came out that did so well in the movie theater, it scared me more than entertained me because the character of the Joker, as portrayed in that movie, really at his core was an anarchist. What he wanted was chaos. He wanted chaos in the streets. He wanted the institutions to lose control of the city. And in the movie, the Joker was able to get that. I look at many of these people like Mamdani, people who are okay with protesters just shutting down the streets or going after and figuring out who the ICE agents are and doxing them on the internet and harassing them and their families and all of the things that people with his political profile sign up for. And I say to myself, what they are at their core is not really socialists. They're anarchists. They want chaos in the streets. They think the system is racist and rigged and sexist and everything else, and they just want to destroy it. And they figure that chaos in the streets is better than a system that's rigged.
That is the hallmark of 99% of these protests. And you've noticed it too. It's chaos. They love the chaos. They love the loud banging, the drums, anything but actual rational thought. They just want you to react. They're not interested in you actually thinking about anything. I talk about that on my podcast all the time. They don't want you to think about anything. They just want you to respond and react to something. That's why it's always loud. It's always chaos. People running and screaming and yelling and look what happened. You opened this segment by talking about what happened in D.C. today. Now, I actually learned a few things from you. I think, did you mention there are 2 fatalities?
2 fatalities, according to Fox.
Oh, man. Yeah, see, I didn't even know that. I knew something bad had happened. They were critical, but I didn't know there were fatalities. I wouldn't be surprised. It's the same thing. You have these crazy people running around creating all kinds of chaos. They thrive on the chaos. And they also thrive on, the fact that you don't really know They're not interested in you knowing the truth about anything either. I mean, there's that. They just want to, get you all riled up, thinking that something is terribly wrong and that they're going to fix it. And that's and it's hard for me to do that because I've been around now. I've seen this over and over again. That's why they prey upon younger people who haven't been. It's their first rodeo, and they buy into it. And there's a whole new crop of people that think this is great. We saw it here in L.A. With the ICE thing last spring. It was June, when the mayor was talking about how upset we all were, that ICE was in LA and the National Guard here, and how upset we are. It's like, I'm not upset, but we're really upset, aren't we? We're really upset. And what did we get? We got more chaos. They love that. That's the hallmark of so many of these protests, especially the ones that get out of control. And God knows what's going to happen in D.C. over the next couple of days. It's terrible news, what we hear today. However, does it surprise you?
No, it doesn't. And it's so Orwellian. What you just said is so correct. It's so Orwellian how when you see, let's just say, for example, a freeway being shut down by protesters, and it's shut down to the point where there's now vendors on the freeway. I'm sure you've seen this, selling hot dogs and whatever. Yeah. And they bend over backwards to tell you it's a peaceful protest. And you go, it's not a peaceful protest. If you're shutting down a freeway and preventing people from getting to work, people from getting to the airport, emergency vehicles getting to the hospital, all of those things, that's not peaceful. That's breaking the law.
Right, and they tolerate it. Notice they tolerate it. That's the thing. The cops tolerate it. I don't have any statistics on this, John, but you know what? When I drive around in traffic in LA, and I'm on both sides of the hill, I'm in Hollywood a lot. I'm on Sunset and Hollywood Boulevard, all those classic areas that people think about when they think about LA, and also in the Valley at the same time. You know what I don't see anymore? I don't see any cops. I used to see cops. Matter of fact, when I was younger, I saw too many cops in California. Now it's gone the other way. You don't see any cops. And where did they all go? It is amazing, and I've noticed that people drive a lot more. What do we call aggressively now? Because I think it's sort of a dog world out on the streets. There's nobody there. If you want a cop. You better, say there's a man with a gun and there's, shots fired, or else you're not going to see any cops.
The Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, came out yesterday and told passengers that they need to start dressing up when they get on airplanes, that wearing pajamas and showing your plumber's cleavage and wearing slippers, that is not appropriate attire for the airport. Your thoughts?
Well, did you see the image of RFK Jr. walking down a plane aisle with no shoes on? Now, I don't know if that's, today, I don't know whether that's real or not. It could be AI. Did you see that picture?
I've heard about it. I haven't seen the picture.
Right. And again, with AI, every time I start talking on my show now, I always say, look, if this is real, because you just don't know anymore. If this is real, then that's what's going on. If it's not, forget I said anything, but, take it with a grain of salt. Apparently, RFK Jr., and this could be all fake, there's a picture of him walking down the aisle with no shoes on and bare feet. It's a different world. We have gone from where many, many years ago flying was glamorous, and it was a big deal. And, Sean Duffy is right. He's being laughed at and made fun of. We have bigger problems than that. But I think that is a big problem, that people dress like slobs and they act like slobs. Being on an airplane these days, it's like being in a UFC cage match. You're locked inside a tube at 35,000 feet and there's no getting out, And for some reason, we love this kind of crap on airplanes. And to me, it's not very appealing at all. But, there's no place to go when you're on the plane. You're stuck.
Joe Crummey, host of the Evil Thoughts podcast. You can get him online at joecrummey.com and follow him on X at Joe Crummey. Joe, thanks so much for stopping by. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
You too, John. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
It's the John Phillips Show. It's the John Phillips Show. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And if you'd like to continue listening to the show after we sign off at 3 or over the holiday break, that's easy to do. All you have to do is subscribe to the podcast edition of the program, and the new episodes will download automatically to your phone. You don't have to download each one of them individually. It happens automatically, and you can enjoy the podcast whenever and wherever you'd like. As I mentioned before, there's breaking news coming from the nation's capital where two West Virginia National Guardsmen were shot during a shooting. Both of them have passed away. According to reports from Fox, the FBI is on it. It looks like an arrest may have been made. The FBI Director Patel, is expected to provide an update coming up later on this afternoon. We'll bring you those details as soon as they become available. All right, I want to go back to a point that was made during the interview with Joe Crummey, which involves a statement that was put out by the Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy. And it was about people dressing better at the airport, people dressing up for flights. And generally speaking, I don't need suggestions on how to run my life from the government. I can figure things out on my own. However, in this particular case, I think that that is a helpful suggestion for a lot of different reasons. First and foremost, I don't know what it is about the airport that just turns people into a-holes. You can take someone who's a normal functioning person on the outside and you put them outside of a Cinnabon at the airport, and suddenly they become a rageaholic. Everyone becomes Donald Duck with pants on. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the sights. Maybe it's the smells. I don't know. Everyone is in a bad mood at the airport. The airport is one of these places where nothing makes sense. Maybe that's part of it. If you just think about what you have to go through every time you show up to the airport, none of it's logical. You have your ticket, you show up to the airport, you want to get to your plane. You hit the TSA checkpoint. What's the first thing they do? Take your shoes off, take everything out of your pockets, take your laptop out of the bag, put it on the conveyor belt, walk through the metal detector. And once you get through that metal detector, they give you all the booze you can drink and a knife. Because that's airport logic. So nothing makes sense there. And over time, you have seen the difference in how people dress for air travel. You look back at pictures from the 1950s, and you see how glamorous air travel used to be, where the guys were in coats and ties, and the women were in dresses. And you look at the food that they used to serve on the airplanes. It was tasty looking. They wouldn't have frozen sandwiches on the plane. They didn't have peanuts or Biscoff. They had a full prime rib carving station that they would bring down the aisle like you were at Lowry's. Only they didn't spin the salad around. And then once you were done with your meal, they would bring you an ice cream sundae bar down that same aisle. And you got to pick from maybe not 31 flavors, but whatever it was that they had. And then after you were done with your prime rib and your hot fudge sundae, you could chain smoke until you got to Dallas. There were ashtrays in the armrests. And you could just go to town right there. You want to smoke a pack? Smoke a pack. You want to smoke two? Knock yourself out. Nobody cared. Can you imagine what that airplane must have smelled like back in those days. First, you got the prime rib, then you have the dessert, and then the entire cabin smells like Lucille Ball's lungs because everyone is lighting up. But even with the cigarettes and the cigarette smoke, it was glamorous. People wanted to ride on an airplane. It was something that few people could afford to do. There was no Spirit Airlines back then. There was no Frontier. There was no Southwest. You just had the big ones. And you paid whatever it was that they told you you had to if you wanted to ride on one of their airplanes. And people paid it. But then what happened was we made it so cheap to fly that the general public could afford to buy an airplane ticket. And the cheapness of the tickets gave a certain amount of freedom to people who in the past would never be able to get anywhere near the airport. Well, when you give access to the general public, guess what you get? You get the general public. Which is why now when you go to the airport, you don't see anyone in a suit and tie or you don't see any woman in a dress. Everyone looks like a prostitute at the swap meet. I don't know when that started. And I don't know when it started when people started wearing pajamas to the airport. That's a new one. People show up like it's a slumber party. And they're always about 2 sizes too small. You notice that one too? There's a little junk in the trunk, a little spare tire. And they think it looks cute, I guess. It'll be cute if I get on my Southwest Airlines airplane in pajamas. No, it doesn't look cute. You look like a slob. And the shoes coming off on the flights. That's another thing I hate. You do realize that when they clean those airplanes, it's just window dressing. It's not like they shampoo the carpets. It's not like there's a deep clean that goes on after every flight. They just want to make it look presentable. And if you have people who are taking their shoes off and they're going up and down the aisle in the cabin with their bare hooves on the carpet, you're going to catch all kinds of crazy diseases. Who would do that? People do. People also show up sick as a dog. That's how I got sick. I sat next to this woman, and I don't want to be insulting in describing her, but she was a complete and utter pig. And she was sick, and she would blow her nose into her bare hands. And I took one look at this pig, and I said to myself, "You're getting Ebola." And I've been sick for about 2 weeks. That woman should have stayed home. Why in the world would you get on a crammed airplane for 11 hours if you are that physically ill? She should have just, I don't know, got shot with a tranquilizer gun and spent the night at the zoo. Just stayed at home. Not go to the airport and get on an airplane and get everyone sick around you. That was rude and disrespectful. But that's what people do. Nobody cares at the airport. And I do believe that psychologically you behave differently if you're dressed appropriately. Whenever you're dressed in a way that makes you look like a slob, makes you look like it's spring break or whatever, that's how you act. If you're at the airport in flip-flops, shorts, and a T-shirt with something inappropriate written on it that you bought at Spencer's at the mall, you're not going to follow the rules. You think that person is going to have their tray tables up during takeoff and landing? No way. 0% chance that's going to happen. But if you're dressed like a professional, I think psychologically it makes you act more professional. I know it does with me. If I'm just lounging around the house in house clothes, I notice a difference in my own language. It's less formal. You swear a little bit more. You use more slang, that sort of thing. But if you dress like that and you're at the airport and someone pisses you off, which is going to happen at the airport, it's going to happen, in fact, in the first 5 minutes of getting there. First time someone tells you to take your shoes off and walk across a filthy floor, that's going to upset you. There's no way around it. You show up to the airport, they go, oh, you missed the cutoff by 5 minutes. You can't check your bag in. That's going to upset you. So the rage starts building up. But if you're dressed like a professional, professionals just can't pop off. I guess some can, but you're not supposed to. You're supposed to have a certain degree of professionalism, decorum. But if you're in your own pajamas, then that's when you can just lash out at anyone around you. I think this is a great idea, and I'm glad the secretary suggested it. It's not a law. It's not a rule. They're not forcing you to dress a certain way. It's just a friendly suggestion, and I hope people take them up on it. Maybe some will, not everyone, maybe not even a majority. But if people start dressing up better when they go to the airport, then maybe they won't spend as much time on YouTube. Because whenever you see these fights showing up on YouTube, none of them are dressed like stockbrokers. They're dressed like they're at a Carnival cruise involved in a fist fight at the pool. Section 8 of the seas. I think dressing up would make the experience, the overall experience at the airport and on the airplane much better. What say you at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222? Is it time that people started dressing up when they show up to the airport for a flight? I think that would be a grand idea. 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Your call's coming up right here on The John Phillips Show. It's The John Phillips Show. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to Steve in Laguna Hills. Steve, hello.
Hey, John. Hi, John. I'm a retired American Airlines captain, LAX based for forever. I agree with all your points. Here's what I think. Like when I was first hired, if we flew on our own using our flight privileges, we had to dress up in a suit and tie. Those days are gone. I'm a cruiser like you. I retired in 2008. We've got 55 cruises under our belt. I will only fly business class if I can afford it. That if you go to the club and do business class, it's an entirely different experience. I did, however, I'm going to say parenthetically, just go up to Seattle on Alaska. It was a 2.5-hour flight out of Santa Ana. It was great, but it is what it is. And, I think that for long-haul flights and, trying to get anywhere from point A to point B, you either save into business class. First class is out of touch, but otherwise it's like Disneyland on the, in the longest line you can imagine, on the worst ride you could imagine. Not worth it. So that's my input for you, and you know what I'm talking about.
All right. Well, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. You're right. If you want to spend the money and you want to play the game, you can have a totally different experience at the airport. If you get the global entry, then you can skip the line at TSA. If you have access to the airport club, you don't have to wait around all the chaos. And if you're in business or first class, they treat you like an actual human being. Let's go to Gene in Walnut Creek. Gene, hello.
Hi there. you. Love the show. So your topic brings up the question, when and how did all this start? Well, my father, late father, back in about 1973, said something to me that it went in one ear and out the other. And boy, I can't help but to think about what he said. When this country stopped the mandatory draft. Now he was not he was in the Army, but he was not a military-minded guy. He said that this is the start of the decay of this country. There will be guys that need direction, and the military had a way, whether you liked it or not, to teach you respect for others, yourself, and the country. And if I had to guess, I'm going to say my dad was 110% correct. And here's the last part of my statement here. This quest to be el natural and peace-loving and free to do whatever you want, free whatever you want to say, is exactly the cancer that is turning this country into a filthy mess. And I'm 66 years old. I'm going to be around for a little while, God loving me. But I'm convinced that we're headed for a real barbarian sort of, to overtaking the Romans if we don't make an about face real quick here. Hey, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the call. My dad was of the belief that the downfall of society started when they started serving nachos out of helmets. Let's go to John in Anaheim. John, welcome.
Hey, thank you, John. Appreciate the call. First of all, I just want to say thoughts and prayers to the National Guardsmen and women that may have gotten killed or shot, whatever. Just want to put that out there. But couple of quick comments. I was flying out to my niece's wedding. Didn't have room to pack my suit, so I just wore it. I thought, I'll just wear it. Got to the airport, got on a flight, was treated like royalty. So I agree with what you're saying, but there's a flip side to it as well. I just got treated really nicely by the ticket counter, the stewardesses, and I had to attribute that to the suit. So that's one thing. The other thing, I was on another flight where this really kind woman says she flies all the time, and she just made an offhand comment. She goes, they're just flying buses. And I thought, that's interesting. And I thought it kind of is. It's kind of come to that. It's just a flying bus. That's all I wanted to say. And thank you for taking the call.
Well, you probably got treated better because in a suit you commanded respect. And when you commanded respect, people gave it to you. Let's go to Richard in Long Beach. Richard, welcome. You have about 45 seconds.
Hi, John. Thanks for taking my call. The way I see it over a period of time, I was born in 57, and I just see changes overall. A lot of communication issues. Older generations preferred face-to-face talking, not being rude and talking loud on the phone in front of other people. Public conduct was completely different, and social interaction was completely different, too. People really behaved. I think a lot of it has to do with the social norms, just trying to be polite. It's funny that somebody would actually bring that up, probably from their childhood. Primarily, social media has a huge impact on all this, and it affects the way people are raised.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. Thank you for the call, sir. We have one more hour coming up on the John Phillips Show. Jeffrey Lord joins us next. Don't you go anywhere.